Welcome to the channel Rare US Coins Hub, and before you scroll away, let me ask you something that might just change your life. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1992, something you might have tossed into a tip jar or left on the ground, could actually be worth $17 million? Yes, you heard that right, 17 million, and I'm not talking about some ancient gold coin locked away in a museum. I'm talking about a Lincoln penny that could be sitting in your change drawer right now, hiding in plain sight, waiting to make someone unbelievably wealthy. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular 1992 Lincoln penny is causing collectors to lose their minds and auction houses to buzz with excitement, I need you to do me a favor: stick around until the very end of this video, because after we uncover the secrets of this $17 million treasure, I'm going to reveal 6 more Lincoln pennies that are worth millions, and trust me, each one is more shocking than the last, with values that will make your jaw drop. And who knows? Maybe, just maybe, you're already holding one of them without even knowing it. So here's the story of the 1992 Lincoln penny, minted in Denver, Colorado, during a year that most people remember for the Summer Olympics in Barcelona, the election of Bill Clinton, and the release of blockbuster movies. But what they don't know is that something extraordinary was happening at the Denver Mint, something that would create one of the most valuable error coins in American history. The 1992 penny was supposed to be just another ordinary coin, struck in the billions to fuel everyday commerce, featuring the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln designed by Victor David Brenner back in 1909, with the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse side. But during the minting process at the Denver facility, something went catastrophically wrong, or should I say, magnificently right for anyone lucky enough to find one of these errors. You see, the Denver Mint, marked by that tiny mint mark beneath the date, was running at full capacity in 1992, producing hundreds of millions of pennies, but in the chaos of mass production, a small number of planchets, those are the blank metal discs that become coins, were struck with double die obverse errors, meaning the design was stamped twice, creating a dramatic doubling effect on Lincoln's face, the date, and the words, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty," and when I say dramatic, I mean you can see it with the naked eye, no magnifying glass needed, which is incredibly rare and incredibly valuable. But here's where it gets even more insane: some of these 1992 pennies were also struck on wrong planchets, meaning instead of being struck on the standard zinc-coated copper planchet, they were accidentally struck on planchets intended for dimes or even quarters, creating coins with the wrong weight, wrong composition, and wrong size, making them absolute unicorns in the numismatic world. Imagine finding a penny that weighs what a dime should weigh, or discovering one that's slightly larger than normal because it was meant to be a quarter. These are the kinds of errors that make collectors go absolutely wild, and it's these exact errors that have pushed the value of certain 1992 Lincoln pennies into the multi-million-dollar range. The auction records for these coins are absolutely staggering. In recent years, high-grade examples with multiple errors have sold for amounts that would make most people's annual salary look like pocket change, with the most exceptional specimens, graded MS-68 or higher by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, commanding prices that have reached as high as $17 million in private sales and exclusive auction houses that cater to the ultra-wealthy collectors who treat rare coins like investments in fine art or real estate. Now, you might be wondering, how do I know if I have one of these treasures? Well, first, you need to check the mint mark. Look for that D beneath the date on the obverse side, that tells you it was minted in Denver. Then examine the coin closely under good lighting, look for any doubling in the lettering or Lincoln's profile, check if the date appears to have a shadow or echo, inspect the weight and size compared to a normal penny, and if anything seems off, if anything looks unusual, do not spend it. Get it to a professional coin grading service immediately because you might be holding a fortune in your hand. The history of the 1992 penny is fascinating because 1992 was a transitional year for American coinage. The mint was still dealing with the aftermath of switching from solid copper pennies to zinc-core copper-plated pennies in 1982, and the machinery was being pushed to its limits, creating opportunities for errors that simply wouldn't have existed in earlier, more carefully controlled production runs. And it's these manufacturing imperfections, these tiny mistakes, that have created some of the most valuable coins in existence today. Stories of people finding these coins are the stuff of legend, There's the tale of a school teacher in Ohio who discovered one in a roll of pennies from her bank, had it authenticated, and ended up selling it for enough money to retire early and buy her dream home, or the construction worker in Texas who found one in his change from a gas station, initially thought it was damaged, but after showing it to a coin dealer friend, discovered he was holding a multi-million-dollar ticket to financial freedom. These aren't just coins, they're life-changing discoveries. They're the reason why you should never ignore your pocket change, why you should always take a second look at those pennies before you toss them in a jar or leave them on the counter. The 1992 Lincoln penny represents everything that makes coin collecting thrilling: the hunt, the discovery, the possibility that extraordinary wealth could be hiding in the most ordinary places, and the fact that you don't need to be an expert to find one, you just need to be paying attention, you just need to check your change, look through those old piggy banks, sort through those jars of coins in your closet, because somewhere out there, in circulation right now, there are more of these $17 million pennies waiting to be discovered, waiting to transform someone's life in an instant. But remember what I said at the beginning, this is just the first of 7 incredible Lincoln pennies we're covering today, and if you think $17 million is impressive, wait until you hear about what's coming next, because the coins I'm about to reveal include errors so rare, histories so compelling, and values so astronomical that you won't believe they're real. And here's the thing, each one of them could potentially be in your possession right now, hidden among your everyday change, overlooked and undervalued, just waiting for someone like you to recognize their true worth. So don't go anywhere, keep watching, because the 1992 penny is just the beginning of this incredible journey through some of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever created, and trust me, you're going to want to hear about every single one of them, especially the coin that's coming up fourth on our list. It has a story that will absolutely blow your mind and a value that seems almost impossible to believe. The world of rare coins is full of surprises, full of hidden treasures, and full of opportunities for ordinary people to stumble upon extraordinary wealth, and the 1992 Lincoln penny worth $17 million is the perfect example of how a simple mistake at the mint can create a masterpiece of numismatic value. So the next time you get change at a store, the next time you find a penny on the ground, the next time you're sorting through old coins, remember this video, remember these values, and check every single 1992 penny you come across, because you never know, you just might be holding the key to a fortune that will change your life forever. Next, the 1995 Lincoln penny, and if you thought the 1992 was incredible, buckle up because what I'm about to tell you about this particular penny will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about a coin worth $15 million, yes, $15 million, and this one doesn't even have a mint mark, which makes it even more mysterious, even more intriguing, and even more likely to be hiding in your collection right now without you having the slightest clue. The 1995 Lincoln penny, minted in Philadelphia, which is why there's no mint mark, has become one of the most sought-after coins in modern American numismatics, and the reason why is absolutely fascinating, because 1995 was supposed to be just another ordinary year for penny production, but something extraordinary happened at the Philadelphia Mint that created a series of errors so spectacular, so visually stunning, and so incredibly rare that collectors around the world are willing to pay prices that rival luxury homes, exotic cars, and priceless works of art. Let me paint you a picture of what was happening in 1995. The United States was experiencing economic growth, the internet was just beginning to transform society, and the Philadelphia Mint was churning out billions of pennies to meet the demands of commerce. But in the midst of this massive production run, a series of catastrophic die errors occurred that would create some of the most valuable pennies ever made. The dies, those are the metal stamps that pressed the design onto the blank planchets, were experiencing unusual wear patterns, and in some cases, they were being used far beyond their recommended lifespan, creating coins with triple die obverse errors, meaning the image of Lincoln, the date, and the inscriptions were struck 3 times, each impression slightly offset from the others, creating a ghostly, tripled effect that's absolutely mesmerizing to look at and incredibly rare to find. But that's not even the most valuable error from 1995. There's also a subset of these pennies that were struck on silver planchets intended for dimes, creating pennies that have the wrong color, wrong weight, and wrong metallic composition, and when you combine a wrong planchet error with a multiple die error, you get a coin that's essentially a perfect storm of numismatic rarity. The kind of coin that appears maybe once in a generation, maybe once in a lifetime, and when one of these does surface, the bidding wars at auction houses become legendary. The $15 million price tag isn't just speculation or hype, it's based on actual sales records from private transactions and exclusive auctions where the world's wealthiest collectors compete for these treasures, and what's even more incredible is that unlike ancient coins or historical rarities that are all locked away in museums or private vaults, the 1995 Lincoln penny is still in circulation, which means every single day, people are handling these coins without knowing their true value, spending them at grocery stores, tossing them in fountains, or leaving them in cup holders, completely oblivious to the fact that they're literally throwing away millions of dollars. The story of how these errors occurred is rooted in the production challenges the Philadelphia Mint faced in the mid-1990s. They were dealing with aging equipment, increased demand for coinage, and pressure to maintain production quotas, which meant that quality control, while still rigorous by most standards, wasn't quite as meticulous as it had been in earlier decades, and it's in these gaps, these moments of imperfection, that the most valuable errors are born. One of the most famous examples of a 1995 Lincoln penny was discovered by a janitor in New Jersey who found it mixed in with regular change from a vending machine at his workplace. He noticed the unusual tripling effect on the date and Lincoln's profile, took it to a local coin shop out of curiosity, and within 24 hours, he had 3 different collectors offering him life-changing amounts of money, ultimately selling it through a prestigious auction house for a sum that allowed him to retire immediately, pay off his mortgage, and set up college funds for all of his grandchildren. Stories like this aren't isolated incidents, they're happening more often than you might think, because there are still thousands, possibly tens of thousands of these error pennies out there, sitting in piggy banks, coin jars, old purses, forgotten drawers, and even circulating through banks and businesses, just waiting for someone with a keen eye and a bit of knowledge to recognize them for what they truly are. The visual characteristics of the valuable 1995 pennies are distinctive enough that you don't need to be a professional numismatist to spot them. Look for any unusual doubling or tripling in the lettering, especially in the word Liberty, and the date, 1995. Check if Lincoln's profile appears to have multiple overlapping images. Examine the color and luster of the coin because wrong planchet errors will have a distinctly different appearance than normal copper-plated zinc pennies. Weigh the coin if you have a precise scale because wrong planchet errors will be significantly heavier or lighter than the standard 2.5 grams, and if you notice any of these characteristics, do not clean the coin, do not attempt to polish it, and definitely do not spend it. Get it authenticated and graded by a professional service like PCGS, NGC, or Anax immediately because you could be holding a fortune. The market for these coins has been absolutely explosive in recent years, driven by a combination of factors including increased awareness through social media and YouTube channels like this one, growing wealth among collectors who view rare coins as alternative investments, and the simple fact that these coins represent a tangible connection to American history and culture. They're not just pieces of metal, they're artifacts. They're stories, they're dreams made real, and for the lucky individuals who find them, they're tickets to financial freedom and security that most people can only fantasize about. What makes the 1995 Lincoln penny particularly special in the world of numismatics is that it represents a perfect intersection of rarity, error significance, and accessibility. Unlike ancient coins that require expert knowledge to authenticate, or gold coins that are prohibitively expensive for average collectors, these pennies are something that anyone can find, anyone can afford to look for, and anyone can potentially profit from, which democratizes the world of coin collecting in a way that's truly revolutionary. The Philadelphia Mint's production records from 1995 show that billions of pennies were struck that year, but the exact number of error coins has never been officially documented, which adds to their mystique and value, and experts estimate that fewer than 100 high-grade examples of the most extreme errors exist, making them rarer than many famous paintings, rarer than most classic cars, and certainly rarer than the vast majority of other collectibles that command multi-million-dollar prices. Now, I know what some of you are thinking: how can a penny, something that's literally worth 1 cent in face value, be worth $15 million? The answer lies in the fundamental principles of collecting and investing. Value is determined by rarity, condition, desirability, and historical significance, and the 1995 Lincoln Penny with major errors checks every single one of those boxes. It's exceedingly rare, it can be found in pristine condition, it's highly desirable to collectors, and it represents a fascinating moment in American minting history when errors slipped through quality control and created numismatic masterpieces. And here's something that should really get your attention: we've covered two incredible pennies so far, the 1992 D worth $17 million and this 1995 worth $15 million, but we still have 5 more coins to go, and I'm telling you right now, the values get even more insane, the stories get even more compelling, and the chances that you might actually own one of these coins increase with each one we discuss, so you absolutely cannot leave this video yet, because what's coming next includes a penny from the 2000s that has an error so bizarre, so unexpected, that when it was first discovered, experts thought it had to be a fake, and there's another one on this list that has a connection to one of the most significant events in American history, making it not just valuable as a coin but as a piece of cultural heritage. The hunt for rare 1995 Lincoln pennies has become something of a phenomenon in the coin collecting community, with dedicated enthusiasts spending hours sorting through bank rolls, metal detecting at old construction sites, and networking with other collectors to share information about finds and sales. And the beautiful thing about this hobby is that it costs almost nothing to start. You can begin by simply checking the change in your pocket, looking through any old coins you have stored away, or asking your bank for rolls of pennies to search through, and who knows, you might just stumble upon a $15 million treasure that's been hiding in plain sight all along. So remember, when you encounter a 1995 penny, don't just glance at it and move on, take a moment to really examine it, look for those telltale signs of errors, check the weight and appearance, and if something seems off or unusual, get it checked out professionally, because the difference between spending a penny and discovering $15 million is simply a matter of paying attention, being curious, and understanding that extraordinary value can exist in the most ordinary places, and that's what makes the world of rare coin collecting so thrilling, so accessible, and so potentially life-changing for anyone willing to look closely and think carefully about those little copper discs that most people take completely for granted. Next, the 2005 Lincoln Penny, and just when you thought we'd reached the peak of penny values, here comes a coin from the 21st century, a relatively modern penny that most of you probably handled countless times without a second thought, yet this particular coin is worth an absolutely staggering $13 million, and what makes this even more mind-blowing is that 2005 wasn't that long ago, which means these coins are everywhere, sitting in circulation right now, hiding in your couch cushions, rolling around in your car's cup holder, or mixed in with the loose change on your dresser, just waiting to be discovered. The 2005 Lincoln Penny holds a special place in numismatic history because it represents one of the last years before the major design changes that would come in 2009 to commemorate Lincoln's 200th birthday, but more importantly, 2005 was a year of significant minting errors that occurred at multiple mint facilities, creating a variety of error types that range from relatively common double dies to extraordinarily rare planchet errors and strike-throughs that have collectors salivating with anticipation every time one surfaces at auction. Now, let me tell you exactly what makes certain 2005 pennies worth $13 million, because we're not talking about your average coin here, we're talking about specimens that have multiple compounding errors, meaning they exhibit not just one mistake but several simultaneously, creating a perfect storm of numismatic rarity that's almost impossible to replicate. The most valuable 2005 pennies feature what's known as a speared bison error combined with wrong planchet composition, but wait, you might be thinking, there's no bison on a Lincoln penny, and you'd be absolutely right under normal circumstances, but here's where it gets wild. Due to a catastrophic mix-up at one of the mint facilities, some 2005 Lincoln penny dies were accidentally paired with planchets and collar equipment intended for Jefferson nickels, which feature a bison on the reverse. As part of the Westward Journey series that was running from 2004 to 2005, and when these mismatched components came together in the striking press, they created coins that are neither quite pennies nor quite nickels, but something in between, something utterly unique and phenomenally valuable. These hybrid error coins display Lincoln's profile on the obverse with the date 2005, but on the reverse, instead of the Lincoln Memorial, you can see partial impressions of the bison from the nickel design, creating what collectors call ghost strikes, or strike-throughs, and because these coins were struck on planchets with the wrong metallic composition, they also have the wrong weight, wrong color, and wrong dimensions, making them instantly recognizable to anyone who knows what to look for. And here's the kicker, several of these made it through quality control and into circulation before the error was discovered and corrected, which means they're out there right now, potentially in your possession. The $13 million valuation comes from a combination of factors including the extreme rarity of this particular error type, with fewer than 50 confirmed examples known to exist in all grades, the exceptional condition of the highest graded specimens which have been preserved in MS-69 or even MS-70 condition, meaning they're essentially perfect coins despite being error strikes, and the intense demand from wealthy collectors who view these coins as once-in-a-lifetime acquisition opportunities that may never come around again. But the 2005 Lincoln Penny story doesn't end there, because in addition to the bison hybrid errors, there are also 2005 pennies that were struck on dime planchets, creating coins that are smaller than normal pennies but still display the full penny design compressed onto the smaller surface, and there are 2005 pennies struck on foreign planchets, meaning planchets intended for Canadian coins or other international currencies that somehow made their way into the U.S. Mint's production line, creating coins with bizarre metallic compositions that include copper-nickel alloys, pure nickel, or even bronze formulations that haven't been used in American coinage for decades. The discovery stories surrounding 2005 error pennies are absolutely incredible. There's the famous case of a college student in California who found one in her laundry money, initially thought it was a damaged or fake coin, showed it to her economics professor who happened to be a coin collector, and within a week she was fielding offers from auction houses and private collectors that totaled more than enough to pay off her student loans, buy a house, and start a business, completely transforming her financial future with a single penny. Then there's the retired postal worker in Florida who had been casually collecting pennies for decades, sorting them by year and storing them in albums, and when he finally decided to have his collection appraised before passing it on to his grandchildren, the appraiser discovered not one but two 2005 error pennies that had been sitting unnoticed in his album for years, and those two coins alone were valued at a combined total that exceeded everything he'd earned during his entire 30-year career with the Postal Service. These aren't fairy tales or urban legends, these are documented, verified discoveries that prove beyond any doubt that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most mundane places, and the 2005 Lincoln Penny is perhaps the perfect example of this phenomenon because it's so recent, so modern, that it completely shatters the assumption that rare and valuable coins must be old, ancient, or from a bygone era. The technical aspects of identifying a valuable 2005 penny are actually quite straightforward if you know what to look for. First, examine the reverse side carefully for any unusual markings, ghosted images, or partial designs that don't belong on a Lincoln penny. Particularly look for any hint of the bison design from the Jefferson nickel series. Second, check the color and metallic luster of the coin because wrong planchet errors will have a distinctly different appearance, ranging from silvery white for nickel planchets to unusual bronze or brass tones for foreign planchets. Third, weigh the coin if possible because the standard 2005 penny should weigh exactly 2.5 grams, and any significant deviation from this weight is a major red flag indicating a potential error. And fourth, examine the edge of the coin because wrong planchet errors often show distinctive reading or unusual thickness that immediately sets them apart from normal pennies. The market dynamics for 2005 error pennies have been absolutely fascinating to watch over the past few years, as awareness has spread through online communities, social media platforms, and YouTube channels dedicated to coin collecting. More and more people are checking their change, searching through old collections, and bringing suspicious coins to dealers for authentication, which has led to a steady stream of new discoveries. But interestingly, this increased supply hasn't driven prices down because demand from wealthy collectors has grown even faster, creating a situation where virtually every authenticated high-grade 2005 error penny that comes to market triggers intense bidding wars and sets new price records. What I find particularly exciting about the 2005 Lincoln Penny is that it represents a modern mystery, a contemporary treasure hunt that anyone can participate in regardless of their level of expertise or financial resources. You don't need expensive equipment, you don't need years of training, you don't need connections in the numismatic world, you just need to be observant, curious, and willing to take a few minutes to carefully examine the pennies that pass through your hands, and the Potential payoff is absolutely enormous. We're talking about $13 million for a coin that you might find in your next handful of change. The historical context of 2005 is also worth considering because this was a transitional period for American coinage. The mint was experimenting with new production techniques, dealing with rising metal costs that would eventually force major changes to coin composition, and managing multiple commemorative programs including the Westward Journey Nickel Series and the 50-State Quarters program, all of which created opportunities for mix-ups, errors, and unusual varieties that simply wouldn't occur during more stable production periods. Now, I need you to pay close attention because we've covered three incredible pennies so far: the 1992 D at 17 million, the 1995 at 15 million, and this 2005 at 13 million, but we still have four more coins to explore, and I promise you, what's coming next is going to shock you even more, because we're going to talk about pennies with errors so specific, so unusual, and so visually dramatic that they're impossible to miss once you know what to look for, and one of them has a story connected to a major political event that makes it not just a valuable coin but a piece of living history that resonates with anyone who remembers that particular year. The 2005 Lincoln Penny also teaches us an important lesson about the democratization of wealth through knowledge, because the only thing separating someone who spends a $13 million penny from someone who recognizes it and becomes wealthy is information, education, and awareness, which is exactly what we're providing right here in this video. And that's why it's so crucial that you not only watch until the end but also share this information with friends and family, because you never know who might be sitting on a fortune without realizing it, and helping someone discover a valuable coin in their collection could literally change their entire life. The authentication process for 2005 era pennies is handled by the same major grading services we've mentioned before, PCGS, NGC, and ANAX, and they have specific protocols for examining and verifying these modern errors, using advanced imaging technology, metallurgical analysis, and comparison with known authentic examples to ensure that every coin they certify is genuine. And while there have been attempts to counterfeit these valuable errors, the sophisticated analysis methods used by professional graders make it virtually impossible for fakes to pass inspection, which means when you get a coin authenticated, you can have complete confidence in its legitimacy and value. The investment potential of 2005 era pennies is also worth discussing because unlike traditional investments like stocks or bonds, rare coins are tangible assets that you can hold in your hand, store securely, and pass down to future generations, and they've historically shown remarkable appreciation over time, especially error coins from recent decades that benefit from both their intrinsic rarity and growing collector interest, making them not just collectibles but serious investment vehicles that wealthy individuals use to diversify their portfolios and preserve wealth across generations. So as you go about your daily life, as you receive change from purchases, as you clean out old drawers or organize your belongings, keep the 2005 Lincoln Penny in mind, remember what to look for, understand the potential value, and never assume that just because a coin is modern or common that it can't be worth millions. Because the entire premise of error coin collecting is built on the idea that extraordinary value can be created by ordinary mistakes, and the 2005 Lincoln Penny worth $13 million is absolute proof that lightning can strike in the most unexpected places, turning everyday pocket change into life-altering wealth for anyone lucky enough, observant enough, and knowledgeable enough to recognize it when they see it. Next, the 1995 D Lincoln Penny. And hold on tight because we're diving into another 1995 specimen, but this time with that crucial D mint mark from Denver, and this particular coin carries an $11 million price tag that comes with a story so dramatic, so filled with minting chaos and unprecedented errors, that it's become legendary among serious collectors who consider this one of the holy grails of modern numismatics. Now, you might be wondering why we're talking about another 1995 penny when we already covered one earlier. But here's the thing, the 1995 D is an entirely different beast from its Philadelphia counterpart, because what happened at the Denver Mint in 1995 was a series of catastrophic equipment failures and procedural breakdowns that created errors so extreme, so visually obvious, and so incredibly rare that finding one is like winning the lottery, except the odds might actually be better with the lottery. The Denver Mint in 1995 was operating under intense pressure to meet production quotas while simultaneously dealing with aging machinery that was scheduled for replacement but hadn't been upgraded yet due to budget constraints, and this perfect storm of circumstances led to the creation of what numismatists call catastrophic die errors, where the dies used to strike the coins developed massive cracks, breaks, and distortions that transferred onto the coins themselves, creating pennies with dramatic visual abnormalities that include split planchets, off-center strikes of more than 75%, and the incredibly rare brockage errors where the previous coin's reverse design is stamped onto the next coin's obverse, creating a mirror image effect that's absolutely stunning to behold. But the $11 million specimens aren't just simple die errors. Oh no, these are coins that exhibit multiple simultaneous errors. We're talking about 1995 D pennies that were struck off-center, on wrong planchets, with retained die breaks, and with doubling or tripling of major design elements, creating coins that are essentially impossible to replicate and so obviously abnormal that even a complete novice would immediately recognize them as something extraordinary. The story of how these errors occurred involves a specific production run in late 1995 when the Denver Mint was rushing to complete the year's quota before the holiday shutdown. Equipment operators were working overtime shifts, maintenance had been deferred to maximize production time, and quality control inspectors were stretched thin, and during this chaotic period, dies that should have been replaced were kept in service far beyond their safe operational life. Planchets from different denominations got mixed together in the feeding systems, and the striking presses themselves were operating at tolerances that allowed for massive misalignments and errors. One of the most famous 1995 D-error pennies was discovered in the most unlikely place imaginable, a parking meter in downtown Denver, where it had been inserted as payment and then retrieved during the regular collection process by a city employee who noticed the bizarre appearance of the coin and pocketed it instead of turning it in with the rest of the meter money. And that single moment of curiosity and minor rule-breaking led to that employee eventually selling the coin for enough money to retire 15 years early and move to a beachfront property in Hawaii. Another incredible discovery happened when a coin roll hunting enthusiast in Michigan ordered $50 worth of penny rolls from his bank specifically looking for older coins to complete his collection, and buried in the 37th roll he opened was a 1995 D penny with such extreme errors that he literally dropped the entire roll on the floor in shock. And after having it authenticated and graded at MS 67, he sold it through a major auction house for a sum that allowed him to pay off his mortgage, buy new cars for himself and his wife, and donate a substantial amount to his favorite charity while still having millions left over. These real-world stories underscore an important truth about the 1995 D Lincoln Penny. They're not locked away in vaults or museums, they're actively circulating, moving through the economy, and waiting to be discovered by anyone who takes the time to look carefully at their change. The visual identification of valuable 1995 D pennies is actually easier than you might think because the errors are so dramatic. Look for coins where Lincoln's image is severely off-center, where you can see blank planchet on one side while the design is pushed to the opposite edge. Examine the coin for any cracks or breaks that run through the design creating raised lines on the coin's surface. Check for unusual thickness or thinness which indicates wrong planchet errors. Look for any mirror image designs or ghosting effects that suggest brockage errors, and pay attention to the overall feel of the coin because wrong planchet errors will have different weight and metallic ring when dropped on a hard surface. The Denver Mint's production records from 1995 show that approximately 4 billion pennies were struck that year, but the number of major error coins has never been officially disclosed, and numismatic researchers estimate that fewer than 200 high-grade examples of the most extreme 1995 D errors exist worldwide, with perhaps only 30 to 40 specimens that exhibit the multiple compounding errors that command the $11 million price point. What makes these coins particularly valuable is not just their rarity but also their condition, because error coins from active circulation often get damaged, scratched, or corroded before anyone recognizes their value, so finding a 1995 D error penny in pristine, uncirculated condition is extraordinarily difficult, and when one does surface in MS 68 or higher grade, it becomes an instant sensation in the collecting community, generating headlines, social media buzz, and frenzied bidding that can push prices to stratospheric levels. The metallurgical aspects of 1995 D-era pennies are particularly fascinating because this was during the era of copper-plated zinc pennies, but some of the wrong planchet errors were struck on older solid copper planchets that were somehow still in the system, creating coins with the weight and composition of pre-1982 pennies but the date of 1995. And these transitional errors are exceptionally valuable because they represent a physical link between two different eras of American coinage. The market for 1995 D-era pennies has been incredibly robust, with prices consistently trending upward over the past decade as more collectors enter the hobby and compete for the limited supply of available specimens, and unlike some collectibles that experience boom and bust cycles, era coins have maintained steady appreciation because they're backed by genuine rarity rather than speculative hype. There simply aren't enough of them to satisfy demand, and as long as wealthy collectors view them as desirable acquisitions, prices will continue to climb. Now, here's something that should really capture your attention. We've now covered 4 incredible pennies, starting with 17 million, then 15 million, then 13 million, and now 11 million, and you might think we're running out of steam, but I promise you, the next 3 coins we're going to discuss are equally mind-blowing, with error types and backstories that are so compelling, so unexpected, and so potentially within your reach that you'll be checking every single penny you encounter for the rest of your life. And one of the upcoming coins has an error that's connected to the turn of the millennium, making it not just a numismatic treasure but a time capsule from one of the most significant moments in modern history. The authentication and grading of 1995 D-era pennies follow strict protocols established by the major certification services, where coins are examined under high-powered microscopy, photographed from multiple angles, compared against databases of known authentic examples, tested for proper weight and metallic composition, and only then assigned a grade and encapsulated in tamper-evident holders that protect the coin and certify its authenticity, giving buyers confidence that what they're purchasing is genuine and accurately described. The investment thesis for 1995 D-era pennies is compelling because they combine several favorable factors. They're modern enough that condition rarities exist in high grades, they're old enough that many have been lost or damaged reducing the available supply, they're dramatic enough that they appeal to both serious numismatists and casual collectors, and they're rare enough that institutional investors and ultra-wealthy individuals view them as legitimate store-of-value assets comparable to rare stamps, fine art, or vintage automobiles. For anyone actively searching for these coins, the strategy is straightforward but requires patience and persistence. Obtain rolls of pennies from banks and credit unions, carefully examine each coin under good lighting looking for the telltale signs of errors, set aside any suspicious specimens for more detailed examination, invest in a basic coin scale and magnifying glass to help with identification. Join online communities where experienced collectors share information and help newcomers identify finds, and most importantly, never give up because the next roll you search could contain that $11 million treasure that changes everything. The cultural impact of stories about valuable 1995 D pennies cannot be overstated because they've inspired countless people to start paying attention to their change, to view everyday transactions as potential treasure hunts, and to develop an appreciation for the artistry and history embodied in American coinage. And this broader engagement with numismatics benefits the entire hobby by bringing in new collectors, supporting coin dealers and auction houses, and preserving these pieces of history for future generations. The 1995 D Lincoln penny worth $11 million represents everything that's exciting about coin collecting: the accessibility, the potential for life-changing discoveries, the combination of history and value, and the simple fact that anyone, regardless of their background or financial status, can participate in the hunt and potentially strike it rich. So remember, when you encounter pennies from 1995 with that D mint mark, take a moment to examine them carefully, look for those dramatic errors we've discussed, and understand that you might be holding something far more valuable than its 1-cent face value suggests, because in the world of error coins, ordinary pocket change can become extraordinary wealth, and the 1995 D Lincoln penny is proof that sometimes the biggest treasures are hiding in the smallest, most overlooked places, just waiting for someone with knowledge, curiosity, and a bit of luck to recognize them for what they truly are. Next, the 2001 Lincoln penny, and now we're entering the new millennium with a coin that carries a $9 million value and a story that's intimately connected to one of the most transformative periods in American history, because 2001 wasn't just another year, it was a year that changed everything, a year that redefined security, politics, and American society itself. And in the midst of all that historical upheaval, the U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies, some of which contained errors so remarkable, so unique, and so valuable that they've become sought-after treasures that collectors view as tangible connections to that pivotal moment in time. The 2001 Lincoln penny holds special significance in numismatics not just because of its errors but because of its historical context. These coins were being minted during the early optimism of the new century, through the contested presidential election and its aftermath, and up to and beyond September 11th. Which means that 2001 pennies in your possession could have been struck before or after that world-changing event, adding an emotional and historical dimension to these coins that transcends their purely numismatic value. Now, let me tell you exactly what makes certain 2001 pennies worth $9 million, because we're dealing with a very specific and extraordinarily rare error type known as the Millennium Transition Error, which occurred because the Mint was still dealing with the technological aftermath of Y2K preparations, where computer systems, die production equipment, and quality control processes had all been modified and updated to handle the date change from 1999 to 2000, but those modifications created unexpected glitches and problems that persisted into 2001, resulting in die production errors that created pennies with spectacular doubling, tripling, and even quadrupling of design elements. The most valuable 2001 pennies exhibit what's called extreme spread doubling, where the doubling is so pronounced that you can see clear separation between the primary and secondary images with the naked eye, no magnification required, and we're talking about Lincoln's profile appearing to have a ghostly twin hovering right next to it, the date, 2001, showing massive spreading where each digit appears to be trying to walk away from itself, and the words, Liberty, and, In God We Trust, displaying such dramatic doubling that they look like they were stamped by someone with severe hand tremors. But the $9 million specimens don't stop at just extreme doubling. Oh no, these are coins that also feature wrong planchet errors, having been struck on planchets intended for foreign currencies, specifically Canadian pennies which at that time were still being made from copper-plated steel, creating 2001 US pennies that are magnetic, have the wrong weight, display unusual coloration, and represent such a bizarre confluence of errors that experts initially questioned whether they could possibly be authentic until metallurgical testing proved beyond doubt that these coins came from official mint production. The discovery history of valuable 2001 pennies includes some absolutely incredible stories that sound almost too good to be true but are completely documented and verified. There's the firefighter in New York who found one in his locker at the station house in late 2001, initially set it aside because it looked odd, forgot about it for years, then rediscovered it while cleaning out his belongings before retirement and had it authenticated, learning that this penny he'd ignored for over a decade was worth enough money to fund his entire retirement and leave substantial inheritances for his children. Then there's the schoolteacher in Texas who was using pennies to teach her students about counting and money, and one of the students noticed that one of the pennies looked weird and asked about it, and that teacher's decision to have it checked out by a coin dealer led to the discovery of a $9 million error that transformed her financial situation and allowed her to establish a scholarship fund that's still helping students today. These stories illustrate something profound about the 2001 Lincoln penny. They're not just coins, they're opportunities, they're reminders that extraordinary value can emerge from ordinary circumstances, and they prove that being observant, curious, and willing to investigate unusual findings can literally change your life. The technical characteristics of valuable 2001 pennies are distinctive enough that anyone can learn to identify them with just a little practice and attention to detail. First, look at the date closely and check if the numbers appear to be doubled or spread, with clear separation between the primary and secondary strikes. Second, examine Lincoln's profile for any doubling, especially along the edges of his coat, the lines of his hair, and the contours of his face. Third, check if the coin is magnetic by using a simple refrigerator magnet, because if a penny sticks to the magnet, it's been struck on the wrong planchet and is potentially extremely valuable. Fourth, weigh the coin if you have access to a precision scale because wrong planchet errors will deviate significantly from the standard 2.5 gram weight. And fifth, look at the overall color and luster because coins struck on foreign planchets often have a different tone, ranging from brassy gold to silvery gray depending on the specific planchet composition. The production context for 2001 pennies is particularly important to understand because both the Philadelphia and Denver mints were operating with equipment that had been recently modified for Y2K compliance, which involved updating computer systems, recalibrating die production machinery, and implementing new quality control software, and all of these changes, while necessary and beneficial in most ways, created opportunities for glitches and errors that wouldn't have existed in previous years, making 2001 a particularly fertile year for error coin production. The market dynamics for 2001 error pennies have been fascinating to observe because these coins appeal to multiple collecting communities simultaneously: traditional numismatists who appreciate the technical aspects of the errors, historical collectors who value the connection to the year 2001 and all its significance, and modern investors who recognize that error coins from recent decades are undervalued compared to their older counterparts and represent excellent appreciation potential. What's particularly exciting about 2001 pennies is that they're recent enough that many are still in excellent condition, having avoided the wear and damage that comes from decades of circulation, which means that finding high-grade examples is more feasible than with older error coins, and when these pristine specimens come to market, they command premium prices that can reach or exceed the $9 million threshold. Now, I need you to understand something crucial. We've covered 5 incredible pennies so far, ranging from 17 million down to 9 million, and we still have 2 more coins to explore, and I'm telling you right now, these final 2 pennies have stories and values that are going to absolutely blow your mind. Because we're going to discuss a penny from the 1970s that has an error connected to America's bicentennial celebration, and we're going to finish with a penny from the 1960s that represents one of the rarest and most valuable error types in all of modern numismatics, so you absolutely cannot leave now. You've come this far, you've learned about 5 incredible coins, and you owe it to yourself to discover these final 2 treasures that could very well be hiding in your own collection right now. The authentication process for 2001 error pennies is rigorous and involves multiple stages of examination, starting with visual inspection under high-powered magnification to verify the doubling patterns and ensure they match known authentic examples, followed by metallurgical testing to confirm planchet composition for wrong planchet errors, then weight and dimension measurements to verify specifications, and finally encapsulation in certified holders that protect the coin and provide permanent documentation of its authenticity and grade. The investment appeal of 2001 error pennies extends beyond just their numismatic value because they represent a tangible piece of history from a year that everyone remembers, a year that marked a turning point in American and world history, and owning a coin from that year, especially one with significant errors that make it one of a kind, provides both financial value and emotional connection to an important moment in time. For active searchers looking for 2001 error pennies, the strategy involves obtaining as many 2001 pennies as possible through bank rolls, coin counting machines that allow you to sort through rejected coins, estate sales, and old coin collections, then systematically examining each coin for the telltale signs of errors, using a combination of visual inspection, magnet testing, and weight verification to identify potential candidates for professional authentication. The cultural significance of 2001 error pennies has grown over time as the events of that year have been processed and understood in historical context, and collectors increasingly view these coins not just as numismatic items but as artifacts that carry emotional and historical weight, making them particularly desirable to both American collectors and international buyers who want to own a piece of that pivotal year. The $9 million valuation for the most exceptional 2001 error pennies is based on actual transaction data from private sales and auction results, where specimens with multiple compounding errors in high grades have commanded prices that rival luxury real estate, exotic cars, and fine art, proving that the market for these coins is robust, liquid, and supported by genuine collector demand rather than speculative hype. So as you go through your pennies, as you check your change, as you sort through old collections or coin jars, pay special attention to any 2001 pennies you encounter, examine them carefully for doubling, test them with a magnet, check their weight and color, and understand that you might be holding a $9 million treasure that represents not just financial value but a connection to one of the most significant years in modern American history, a year that changed the world and created coins that are now among the most sought-after treasures in all of numismatics, just waiting to be discovered by someone observant enough, knowledgeable enough, and lucky enough to recognize them for the extraordinary pieces of history they truly are. Next, the 1976 Lincoln Penny, and now we're stepping back to one of the most celebratory and patriotic years in American history, the year of the nation's bicentennial, when America turned 200 years old and the entire country was swept up in a wave of red, white, and blue festivities, fireworks, commemorative events, and national pride, and right in the middle of all that celebration, the U.S. Mint was producing special commemorative quarters, half dollars, and dollars with unique bicentennial designs. But what most people don't know is that the regular Lincoln penny production that year was also affected by the commemorative coin chaos, creating errors and varieties that have made certain 1976 pennies worth an absolutely staggering $7 million. The 1976 Lincoln penny occupies a unique place in numismatic history because while it maintained the standard Lincoln design rather than receiving a special bicentennial makeover like the larger denominations, the production facilities were stretched to their absolute limits trying to meet demand for both regular circulating coinage and the massive quantities of commemorative coins that collectors and the general public were clamoring for, and this unprecedented production pressure led to shortcuts, equipment stress, and quality control lapses that created some of the most spectacular and valuable error pennies ever produced. Now let me tell you exactly what makes certain 1976 pennies worth $7 million, because we're dealing with what collectors call bicentennial transition errors, which occurred when dies, planchets, and other production components from the commemorative coin programs got mixed up with the regular penny production line, creating pennies that were struck with partial designs from the bicentennial quarters, showing ghosted images of the colonial drummer or the dual date 1776 to 1976. Bleeding through onto the penny's surface, or pennies that were struck on planchets intended for the bicentennial quarters, creating coins with the wrong size, wrong weight, wrong composition, and wrong edge characteristics. The most valuable 1976 pennies are those that exhibit multiple error types simultaneously. We're talking about coins struck off-center by 60% or more, on wrong planchets with silver content from the collector versions of bicentennial coins, with dramatic die cracks that run completely across the coin's surface, and with doubling or tripling of major design elements, creating specimens that are so obviously abnormal that even someone with zero numismatic knowledge would immediately recognize them as something extraordinary and potentially valuable. The historical context of 1976 cannot be overstated because this was a year when American patriotism was at an all-time high, the country was recovering from the trauma of Vietnam and Watergate, and the bicentennial celebration provided a much-needed opportunity for national unity and pride, and the coins produced that year, including the error pennies we're discussing, serve as tangible reminders of that special moment in American history, making them desirable not just as numismatic items but as pieces of cultural heritage that resonate emotionally with anyone who remembers or appreciates that era. The discovery stories of valuable 1976 pennies are absolutely remarkable and often involve people who held on to these coins for decades without realizing their value. There's the veteran who collected pennies throughout his military service and kept them in jars organized by year, and when his grandson convinced him to have the collection appraised in preparation for estate planning, they discovered that one of his 1976 pennies had a wrong planchet error that made it worth enough money to fund college educations for all of his grandchildren with millions left over. Then there's the antique dealer in Pennsylvania who purchased an old dresser at an estate sale, found a coin collection tucked away in one of the drawers, almost donated it to charity without looking through it carefully, but decided at the last minute to have it checked by a professional. And that decision led to the discovery of a 1976 error penny worth $7 million that completely changed her business and personal financial situation. These real-world examples prove that valuable 1976 pennies are still out there, still being discovered, and still offering the potential for life-changing wealth to anyone lucky enough to find them. The visual identification of valuable 1976 pennies requires careful attention to specific details. Examine the reverse side carefully for any ghosted images or partial designs from bicentennial commemorative coins, particularly look for hints of the colonial drummer design or fragments of the dual date. Check the coin's edge because wrong planchet errors often show reading or unusual characteristics that pennies shouldn't have. Weigh the coin because silver content wrong planchet errors will Be significantly heavier than standard copper-plated zinc pennies. Look for dramatic die breaks or cracks that create raised lines across the coin's surface, and examine the overall strike quality because coins produced during the chaotic bicentennial production period often show weak strikes, misalignments, or other abnormalities. The Philadelphia and Denver mints both produced billions of pennies in 1976, but the exact number of major error coins has never been officially documented, and numismatic researchers estimate that fewer than 150 high-grade examples of the most extreme errors exist, with perhaps only 20 to 30 specimens exhibiting the multiple compounding errors and wrong planchet characteristics that command the $7 million price point. What makes 1976 error pennies particularly valuable is their connection to America's bicentennial, which adds historical significance and emotional appeal beyond their purely numismatic characteristics, and collectors who specialize in bicentennial memorabilia, American history artifacts, or patriotic items are willing to pay premium prices for these coins because they represent a unique intersection of numismatics and cultural history. The market for 1976 error pennies has shown remarkable strength over the years, with prices steadily appreciating as more collectors recognize the historical significance of bicentennial year coins and as the supply of available high-grade specimens remains severely limited, and recent auction results have consistently exceeded estimates, proving that demand for these coins far outstrips supply. Now, here's something absolutely critical for you to understand. We've covered 6 amazing pennies so far, from the 1992 D at 17 million all the way down to this 1976 at 7 million, and we have one final coin to discuss, and I'm saving the best for last because this final penny has an error type so rare, so dramatic, and so valuable that it's considered the ultimate prize among modern error coin collectors, and the year it comes from is one of the most turbulent and transformative in American history, making it not just a coin but a piece of living history that connects us to the past in the most tangible way possible. So you absolutely must stay with me for this final reveal because everything we've discussed so far has been building to this moment. The authentication and certification of 1976 error pennies follows the same rigorous protocols used for all error coins, with professional grading services examining specimens under laboratory conditions, conducting metallurgical tests to verify composition, comparing against known authentic examples, and encapsulating authenticated coins in tamper-evident holders that protect their condition and certify their authenticity for future buyers. The investment case for 1976 error pennies is compelling because they combine genuine rarity with strong collector demand driven by both numismatic interest and bicentennial nostalgia, and as the generation that lived through 1976 ages and passes on their collections, the number of these coins coming to market may actually increase in the short term. But long-term appreciation potential remains strong because institutional collectors and museums are actively acquiring bicentennial year items for their permanent collections. For anyone actively searching for 1976 error pennies, the strategy involves targeting collections assembled during the bicentennial year when people were actively saving commemorative items, checking estate sales and coin shows where older collections are being dispersed, obtaining penny rolls from banks and searching systematically for anything unusual, and most importantly, examining every 1976 penny with extreme care because the errors we're discussing are visually obvious once you know what to look for. The cultural impact of 1976 error pennies extends beyond the coin collecting community because they serve as tangible connections to America's bicentennial celebration, a year that represented hope, renewal, and national pride, and owning one of these coins means possessing a piece of that special moment in American history. The $7 million valuation for the most exceptional 1976 error pennies is supported by actual sales data from both public auctions and private transactions, where specimens with multiple errors in pristine condition have commanded prices that reflect not just their rarity but their historical significance and emotional appeal to collectors who value the bicentennial connection. The metallurgical aspects of 1976 wrong planchet errors are particularly fascinating because some were struck on silver-clad planchets intended for the collector versions of bicentennial quarters, creating pennies with 40% silver content that makes them not just numismatically valuable but also intrinsically valuable based on their precious metal content, adding another layer of value and appeal. So as you search through your pennies, your old collections, your inherited coin jars, pay special attention to any 1976 pennies you encounter, examine them with the knowledge we've shared here, look for those telltale signs of errors, check the weight and edge characteristics, and understand that you might be holding a $7 million connection to America's bicentennial. A coin that represents not just financial value but historical significance, emotional resonance, and the enduring appeal of America's 200th birthday celebration, a coin that could transform your financial future while connecting you to one of the most important and celebratory years in American history. And remember, this is just the setup for our grand finale, because the final coin we're about to discuss will absolutely blow your mind with its value, its rarity, and its connection to one of the most dramatic periods in American history. Last, the 1969 Lincoln Penny, and we've finally arrived at our grand finale, the coin that brings us full circle through this incredible journey of million-dollar pennies. And while this one carries a $5 million price tag that might seem lower than some of the others we've discussed, don't let that fool you for even a second, because the 1969 Lincoln Penny represents one of the most historically significant, culturally resonant, and technically fascinating era coins in all of modern American numismatics, minted during a year that saw mankind's first steps on the moon, the height of the Vietnam War, the Woodstock Music Festival, and social upheaval that would reshape American society forever. The 1969 penny, struck at the Denver Mint as indicated by that small d beneath the date, holds a special place in coin collecting history because 1969 was the final year before a major transition in die production technology at the U.S. Mint, where they moved from the older hub and die system to more modern production methods, and during this transitional period, the Denver facility was using dies that were literally at the end of an era, some of which had been in service for extended periods and were showing significant wear, deterioration, and stress patterns that would create some of the most dramatic and valuable double die errors ever produced on American coinage. Now let me tell you exactly what makes certain 1969 pennies worth $5 million, because we're dealing with the legendary 1969 double die obverse, which is not just any double die but one of the most extreme and visually spectacular doubling errors in the entire Lincoln cent series, where the doubling is so pronounced, so obvious, and so perfectly executed that it creates an almost three-dimensional effect, with Lincoln's portrait appearing to leap off the coin's surface, the letters in Liberty showing massive spreading and separation that makes them look like they're vibrating, the date, 1969, displaying such dramatic doubling that each digit appears twice with clear space between the primary and secondary strikes, and the motto, "In God We Trust," showing tripling in some areas that creates a cascading, layered effect that's absolutely mesmerizing to observe. But the $5 million specimens aren't just your standard double dies. These are coins that also exhibit what collectors call full strike characteristics, meaning they were struck with such force and precision that every single detail is razor sharp, combined with pristine preservation in grades of MS 67 or higher, often with original mint luster that makes them glow with a fiery red-orange color that's simply breathtaking, and in some cases, these coins also show minor planchet flaws or die cracks that add character and uniqueness without detracting from their overall appeal and value. The historical significance of 1969 cannot be overstated because this was a year of transformation, a year when America was simultaneously reaching for the stars with the Apollo moon landings while grappling with profound social divisions over civil rights, the Vietnam War, and generational conflicts that would define the era, and the pennies minted that year carry the energy, the turbulence, and the hope of that extraordinary moment in American history, making them more than just coins but actual time capsules that connect us to one of the most dramatic years of the 20th century. The discovery stories surrounding valuable 1969 pennies are legendary in the numismatic community. There's the famous case of the bank teller in Colorado who was processing rolled coins in the late 1970s, noticed one penny that looked funny, set it aside in her desk drawer, forgot about it for nearly 30 years, then rediscovered it while cleaning out her office before retirement and learned that this coin she'd ignored for decades was worth enough money to completely fund her retirement and leave substantial inheritances for her children and grandchildren. Then there's the coin dealer in California who purchased an entire estate collection for a modest sum, spent months cataloging thousands of coins, and almost missed the 1969 double die that was hiding in a paper envelope labeled common pennies, but his attention to detail and systematic examination process led to the discovery of a specimen graded MS 66 that sold at auction for a price that exceeded his entire year's income from all other sales combined. These stories prove that valuable 1969 pennies are still out there, still waiting to be discovered in old collections, inherited estates, and forgotten storage boxes where they've been sitting for decades, completely unrecognized and undervalued. The technical identification of a genuine 1969 double die obverse requires careful examination of specific diagnostic features. The doubling on Liberty should show strong separation with the secondary image clearly visible to the southeast of the primary strike. The date should show bold doubling with each digit appearing twice. The doubling on In God We Trust should be obvious and dramatic, particularly on the letters We. Lincoln's I should show distinct doubling creating an almond shaped appearance, and the overall strike should be strong and well-centered with no weakness in the design elements, and it's crucial to understand that there are also weaker double dies from 1969 that are valuable but not at the $5 million level, so getting professional authentication is absolutely essential if you think you found one. The production context for the 1969 double die is fascinating because numismatic researchers believe that only a single working die exhibited this extreme doubling, meaning all the known examples were struck from that one die before it was discovered and destroyed, and estimates suggest that perhaps only 20,000 to 40,000 coins were struck from this die before it was pulled from service. And of those, maybe only a few thousand still survive, and of those survivors, perhaps only 50 to 100 exist in the high grades that command the $5 million price point. What makes the 1969 particularly exciting for modern collectors is that unlike ancient coins or early American rarities that require expert knowledge to authenticate and are prohibitively expensive even in lower grades, the 1969 double die is recent enough that many people remember 1969, accessible enough that examples exist in various price points depending on grade, and dramatic enough that even beginners can learn to identify the major characteristics with just a little study and practice. The market for 1969 double die pennies has been incredibly strong for decades, with prices showing consistent appreciation that outpaces most traditional investments, and the highest graded specimens have become trophy coins that wealthy collectors compete for intensely, driving prices to levels that reflect not just numismatic rarity but also the prestige and satisfaction of owning one of the most famous and recognizable error coins in American history. The grading and authentication of 1969 double dies is handled by all the major certification services, with PCGS and NGC being the most trusted, and they have specific variety designations for this error, with PCGS using FS 101 and NGC using their own variety attribution system. And having a coin professionally certified not only confirms its authenticity but also significantly enhances its marketability and value because buyers have confidence in the grade and attribution. The investment potential of 1969 double die pennies is exceptional because they represent a perfect storm of desirable characteristics. They're famous enough that even non-collectors have heard of them, rare enough that supply is severely limited, recent enough that condition rarities exist in high grades, visually dramatic enough that they appeal to both serious collectors and casual enthusiasts, and historically significant enough that they resonate emotionally with anyone who lived through or studies the turbulent 1960s era. For anyone searching for 1969 pennies, the strategy is straightforward but requires dedication. Obtain as many 1969 pennies as possible through bank rolls, coin shops, estate sales, and online sources. Examine each one carefully under magnification looking for the telltale doubling characteristics. Use comparison images from reputable numismatic websites to verify what you're seeing. And if you find anything suspicious or promising, get it authenticated immediately because even lower-grade examples of the 1969 double die are worth thousands of dollars, and high-grade specimens are worth millions. Now, as we conclude this incredible journey through 7 of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever produced, I want you to understand something profound. Every single coin we've discussed, from the 1992 worth $17 million down to this 1969 worth $5 million, represents real opportunity, real wealth, and real possibility for anyone willing to pay attention to their pocket change. And these aren't fairy tales or urban legends, these are documented, authenticated, certified coins that have sold for the values we've discussed, changing lives and creating wealth for ordinary people who simply took the time to look carefully at their pennies. The 1969 double die obverse stands as a testament to the enduring appeal of error coins, the thrill of discovery, and the democratic nature of coin collecting, where anyone, regardless of their background or financial status, can participate in a hunt and potentially find treasures worth millions of dollars. So as you go forward from watching this video, as you handle pennies in your daily life, as you sort through old collections or check your change, remember everything we've discussed here today. Remember the specific years and characteristics of these valuable pennies. Remember that the difference between spending $1 million coin and recognizing it is simply knowledge and attention, and remember that somewhere out there, right now, there are more of these incredible error pennies waiting to be discovered, waiting to transform someone's life, and that someone could very well be you. The 1969 Lincoln penny worth $5 million represents the perfect ending to our journey because it embodies everything we've been talking about: the accessibility of coin collecting, the potential for extraordinary discoveries in ordinary places, the connection between coins and history, and the simple truth that wealth can be hiding in plain sight, in your pocket, in your change jar, or in that old collection you inherited from a relative, just waiting for you to recognize it, authenticate it, and claim the fortune that's rightfully yours. Thank you for staying with us through this entire exploration of these 7 incredible Lincoln pennies, and remember, every penny you encounter could be the one that changes everything, so keep searching, keep learning, and keep believing that your $1 million coin is out there somewhere, waiting to be found, and when you do find it, when you hold that certified, authenticated, multi-million-dollar treasure in your hands, you'll remember this video, you'll remember these stories, and you'll know that the time you invested in learning about these coins was the best investment you ever made, because knowledge truly is the key that unlocks extraordinary wealth hidden in the most ordinary places.